After I gave them $25,000 and I had bought inventory and I had sent it into Amazon's fulfillment center, Amazon suspends both of my stores. I met this guy on Instagram and he connected me with another person who supposedly can help me unsuspend my store. This guy lived in Armenia and he was a Filipino, right? Right away, I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. A Filipino lives in Armenia and he's asking me for $3,000 to unsuspend my store. Guess what? I paid him. I paid him already limited amount of money. And honestly, he actually got it back. He actually knew what he was doing. He knew a ton. And I learned a lot from him. I was scared as well too, because I was like, I mean, at that point, you know, what's the worst that can happen? Like literally like an extra $3,000. Well, I mean, it's gotta work. You know, I'm not gonna lie, I did do my due diligence, looked into him, talked to him for a couple hours, and I paid him, and you know, he ended up getting my accounts back. And you know, going a little bit forward, you know, I think once the accounts got back, I kept doing my Amazon thing, learning what I was learning. I started connecting with other partners to potentially start this automation business that I'm currently running. And then, you know, the rest is history, obviously. But guess what? It gets even better. So you might be thinking, how can it get any better than this? How can it get actually worse? Well, who would have thought COVID-19 was gonna happen? And that's when things got really crazy. So remember, I was already over 100K in debt with my parents. I owed over $70,000 in student loans. I poured another 25K into an Amazon store. And then the stock market crashed. And some of you guys probably remember this, and that was crazy. I remember when I saw that, I was excited. Another thing people don't know or even realize is that I actually went to school for accounting and finance, so I knew quite a bit about investing in the stock market. I'm a big Warren Buffett fan. I had learned a ton about investing. And you know, when I saw that, right away I was like, this is one of the biggest opportunities of our life. Right away I was like, if only I had all that money. Obviously I didn't, but guess what? I figured it out. And this is where the story got even crazier. So right when I was already getting deep into Amazon, I had my stores back, things were starting to, you know, get good. And I actually met a guy through Instagram. One of my friends that I also went to high school with connected me with this other guy who was doing option trading. And I was like, what is option trading? And then as I got into it and I started learning, I was like, oh, I remember this. Yeah, I learned this back in college. At the same time, you know, I saw the stock market going down. I was like, okay, I don't really need to do anything crazy. You know, Warren Buffett just says, if you invest into value stocks, you put the money in there, money will compound. And if you look at it just from that crash, you're like, okay, even if it gets back just to the same levels, some of these stocks, you were able to double, triple, quadruple, some of them even more. A company like Carnival, CCL, one of the biggest cruising ship companies in the world, they were worth, I think, got down to like $8 a share when they were up as high as 40 something. Think about that. That's an easy 4 to 5x, right? Obviously, like the company actually has to be making money. It doesn't mean it's always gonna go back up. But at the time, I was like, oh wow, like I just gotta put my money in there. So right away, I was like, okay, if I can get my hands on some money and pour it into Apple, into Microsoft, into CCL, into Delta, into, honestly, I'm not even sure how many different types of stocks I was thinking. I just knew if I diversify, these are all huge companies, the chance of them all going down is very minimal. All I gotta do really is double my money. Imagine if I can double that. But how was I gonna get my hand on more money? I had already spent it all. Well, guess what? Because I had done so much research and learned so many things over the past 3 to 4 or 5 years, I knew a way. And this is where credit stacking came in. Have you guys ever heard of pulling money out of 0% interest credit cards? Well, guess what? And that's kind of what I did. I ended up pulling over $200,000 of 0% interest credit cards. It might have been over $300,000. Keep in mind, I owed my parents $100,000. I invested $25,000 into an automated store. I had over $70,000 in student debt. And now I was pulling 0% interest credit cards. Again, my credit score was really good. My wife's credit score was really good. So what did I do? I mean, I maxed them out. And again, I had a lot of knowledge. If I didn't understand and learn so many things over the last 5 years, they all just pile up. And that's what people don't understand. Like when you really just start learning all kinds of things, you're thinking like, oh, I learned this, but I'm not making any money. Well, you're not gonna make money right away sometimes, right? You have to have a way to implement it. Sometimes you will. Sometimes you're gonna be running a business, you learn a new skill, you put it in and you're making money. But when you're not making any money, all these different skills stack up. They just keep stacking and stacking and stacking and stacking, and you get stronger and stronger, literally. Hormozy talks about this, like it's skill stacking as well, and literally that's what happened. I ended up pulling hundreds of thousands of dollars poured it back into the stock market. At first, I was like, hey, I'm just gonna put it in stocks and hold it, right? And I'll double, triple my money. Easy. Well, it wasn't enough for me, right? I met this guy who knew about option trading, like I mentioned, and if any of you guys know what option trading is, you'll quickly realize it is really risky, and you should only be investing when you're willing to lose, and you should probably start with a very small amount. But guess what? I didn't. I started with a few $100,000. I'll tell you this, within a couple weeks, I quickly lost a lot of money. And there was this one trade where I was just like, I can't believe I just lost $30,000 in a single day. Like, it was bad. I did not really know what I was doing. It was a roller coaster ride. I think the first 3 to 4 or 5 months, it was just crazy. I was losing a lot of money, gaining a lot of money. First few months, I was primarily losing to the point where I lost half the money. Think about this. I had already put all that money. I pull all this other money, this other few $100,000. I lose half of it. I'm freaking out. Like, I'm like, how am I gonna get myself out of this hole? Even prior to pulling that money from 0% interest credit cards, I still recall, like, damn, I owe my parents, $100,000 and I only make like $50K a year. How in the world am I ever gonna pay that off? All I kept telling myself is like, I'll pay it off. I don't know how, but I will. Like, I'll figure it out. And I figured it out, luckily. But I lose half the money through option trading. Luckily, I stick to it. I focus on what I gotta do. I'm doing my Amazon thing, making a little bit of money at a time. I have a lot of the right pieces in place already, so some things are going good. I stick it out to option trading and I make a comeback. Honestly, like, I end up making all that money back. There was months where I literally made over $100,000 in profit option trading. It was crazy. But then I would lose $50,000 the next month. And I quickly learned the game. Like, it was honestly very easy for me, but at the same time, where most rookies mess up is the fact that they don't know when to sell. And they also don't know when to cut the losses, and that's where I kept just losing a lot of money. I'd be up 50,000, I'd be down 30,000. And it was just an up and down roller coaster. And I quickly realized, like, okay, I can make a lot of money doing this if I stick to it. I know I can do it. Or can I make more money in the Amazon game, right? I had already started managing my own stores. We had started the automation business around that same time. Things were going pretty good. And then I was like, okay, what's the quickest way for me to get to $1 million in revenue a month, right? And I realized, I'm like, okay, it's probably the Amazon thing. So stopped option trading, stuck to the Amazon business, and we just went along. So I will say this, I've realized that every single year over the last 3 to 4 years, I have put myself in a position where the best way that I can describe it is I feel like I'm gonna throw up. Like, it just feels like it is so risky and there is so much unknown that you don't wanna do it, but I have to do it, right? And it's just kind of what it feels like, and I end up doing it, and it actually works out. So, I end up stop trading. I go all in on the automation business. Me and our partners start having great months. We have a great year, and as time goes on, the business gets tough, 100%, right? Things get harder, business model changes, Amazon's terms of policy gets stricter. I was dealing with all of operations, and we had only VAs at the time. No, customer support team here yet. We hadn't really built out that part out yet. At the same time, we still have marketing and sales, acquiring more clients and investors. And, I love my partners till this day. I learned a ton from them, and I was able to get here because of them. But at the time, I feel like there just wasn't enough to be able to help the business continuously growing. And in order for us to be able to get there, we had to put more emphasis on the marketing and sales and explore other ways of marketing outside of our individual networks. And I understood why they couldn't at the time. They all had their own businesses, they had their own things going, and they just couldn't put the time and focus into it. And I was like, okay, I can do it. But at the same time, I was like, it's kind of unfair that I'm doing everything. So I ended up negotiating a bigger split. They gave it to me, things were good. But as things continued, I quickly realized there's still more to it, and it was just way too much work. And I was like, okay, this does not make any sense. Like, I'm doing a lot of work. As hard as it was, I pretty much had to go my separate way. I had to tell them that, I had to do this on my own, and obviously put a strain in our relationship. I think for the next 6 months after that, it was a tough conversations to have with each other, but luckily we ended up fixing it. We got back together. We're cool now. But when I had to do that, that was really, really hard for me. Like, think about it. I went from somebody who does not know anything about marketing, anything about sales. My thing was finance and operations. That's what I'm good at. That's what I focused on. That's what I thought I was good at the time, right? And that's the best thing I had. I knew nothing about marketing and sales. I knew very little. And to make that big leap, again, I still owe all that money. Remember that. Yeah, I was making a lot more money at the time, but I still owed all that. My overhead was way higher than ever, at least what I thought was high at the time. I was just like, I'll figure it out. Like, I don't know what I was gonna do. Honestly, every time I put myself in a situation like that, that's all I say, like, I will figure it out. Sometimes things get tough. Days you're depressed, days you feel tired, days you don't even know how you're gonna do it, but I just keep saying, I will figure it out. Take it one day at a time. Kind of just numb yourself to it, honestly, like you just kind of have to, and really just focus, like really just hone in on where you're going with it. And luckily, it's crazy how things go, you know, full circle. You guys remember my partner, Adam, who we had a coffee subscription-based company? Well, I actually pitched him the idea to start helping me market. And, you know, I was talking to other affiliates, trying to, you know, build a network of people that can help me push this. And he actually ended up becoming one of my big partners in this business. And we ended up generating over $5 million in sales in 2022. And it was crazy. Like, it was an amazing time. Long story short is you can literally go from being hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, I'm talking multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, making barely any money, you can still find a way. And I am honestly like the pinnacle of that. Till this day, I will still do whatever it takes, and I'll probably put myself in any position to do whatever I have to do. I am in a different bit of a situation currently now than when I was 3 years ago. I have 2 daughters. I have a third baby coming. Maybe I gotta be careful, right? Be a little bit more conservative. I will say those, if I was single, I'd be doing some crazy stuff. I would probably still keep doing some nutty stuff like that, because the way I look at it is with enough knowledge and conviction. It's not as crazy, doing crazy things are not as crazy if you really know what you're doing. Warren Buffett has this quote, is that you do not need to diversify if you really know what you're putting your money into. I think I might have chopped that up, but something like that. Long story short is, if you really know what you're doing and you really understand it, it's not risky. It might seem risky to somebody else, but to you, it could just be the next big move. So again, guys, my journey to getting here was not easy. At this current moment, things are still tough. Things are getting harder. There's always a new level of hard. And that's something for you guys to remember, that no matter where you guys are at, no matter how things good are getting, it can always get harder. So always be prepared. Always be financially savvy with what you're doing with your money and not spending it out. Like, I could have gone and bought a Lamborghini and I'm still not buying anything crazy. Like, I don't buy anything luxury. Like, I'm being very conservative. What you got to remember is that you never know what can come next. But as long as you stick to it, as long as you focus on what you got to do, you will figure it out. Thank you guys again for following me on YouTube. Thank you guys again for watching the video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel.